All right, Joshua 5, let's call this one Rolled Away, because this chapter is going to have three events that are going to, in a lot of ways, describe the way in which God is intervening on Israel's behalf in ways that are clearly beyond their abilities. The first thing is we're going to see that the nations west of the Jordan are going to get news of what's going on. And as we've heard before, they are going to fear Israel even more. After that, we're going to see that God is going to have them circumcise all the males of the new generation. And finally, they are going to observe Passover. But in each of these events, like we said, they're going to demonstrate a way in which God is acting in ways that really are beyond Israel's ability. Why? Because the fear that settles into the nations west of the Jordan is going to directly result from the fact that God has dried up the Jordan. And that is the thing the chapter specifically mentions is going to cause these nations to shudder. Beyond that, when they have their males circumcised, it may simply be coincidental, but it's going to specifically mention that at this point, God is going to roll the shame of Egypt away from the nation of Israel. Thus, the title of this section. And then finally, when they have Passover, he is going to end the period of time in which they have temporary provisions, otherwise known as manna from heaven, and they are going to eat from the fruit of or the produce of the land from here on out. And so with those first two, of course, God drying up the Jordan sent a clear message to the nations that were about to be evicted. Second, when he rolled away the reproach, understand that those nations, mighty nations, the Bible is going to call them, that if they thought of Israel at all, they thought of them as slaves. And if anything, they were probably inclined to look down on them. But the same people who might have been inclined to look down on them, God has caused the fear of Israel to settle in to these nations now. And so with that, we are looking at the ways in which, under our own power, we can realize a certain degree of success. But the kind of success that removes your reproach or the shame of things that you haven't done wrong, that's what reproach tends to refer to, is often used with reference to the barren women of the Bible. Women who have a sense of shame that has nothing to do with their sin, having that reproach removed. It's not just a thing we see God doing on behalf of Israel. It's a thing that we see him do on behalf of barren women. And it's a thing that is a fixture of what Christ does for us insofar as we are living the kinds of lives that we sometimes say he would want to put on display, understanding that Israel is a nation he's putting on display as a light to the world. And so what's happening is God is providing not only an indication of ways in which he intervenes on behalf of his people, but the ways in which it's important to understand how it's not a guarantee that it's going to last for any enduring period of time, which is why he tells them to be diligent over and over again, because it's not promised that they'll last on the land any longer or even as long as the inhabitants before them. And that's made clear by the time we get to the end of the chapter. Why? Because Joshua is going to see a man with a drawn sword. And as he approaches him, he's going to ask him a simple question. Are you for us or are you for our adversaries? He's going to give him a simple answer. No. Why? Because he is the captain of the Lord's army. And I often rely on this passage as an indication of why it is not easy to package God up in a nice, tidy box in support of our various positions for and against certain things. Because as we're going to see here, he says, no, I am the captain of the Lord's army, in response to Joshua's question of whose side he's on. And ultimately, by the time we get to chapter 7, we're going to see something that we often say here. The same sword that God uses on behalf of Israel, in many ways, is going to be turned against Israel. And even though it's not necessarily the sword of God that's turned against Israel, he does turn them over to their enemies, and they're going to experience an unexpected defeat. To the degree we are living the kind of lives that he would want to put on display for what he is trying to accomplish in restoring peace to this world, he is able to remove our reproach in ways that we could never do on our own, which is why we say God's best to you as you go forward in him.